I mentioned yesterday that I will talk to you later about light and sound. The reason why I said that is because the teaching of this great master is often referred to as Surta Shabda Yoga. Surta Shabda Yoga means putting attention on the sound. Surt means attention, Shabd means sound, and Yoga means union with your true self. So that is why the yoga itself is called Surta Shabda Yoga. It's necessary to understand what is the role of sound and maybe light. And at some point in our experiences, we'll find out that sound and light internally are the same. Externally, they are different. Externally, sound travels only in a medium like air. But internally, it is like radio waves and can travel even without air. So there is a difference. Sound exists everywhere. There is no place where there is no sound. Nobody has ever experienced complete stillness with no sound. There was a Japanese meditator whom I met in Japan. He said he had built a cubicle made of glass, soundproof glass, that he could sit inside and have complete stillness and no sound. He invited me to come and examine it. It was about 20 miles outside of Tokyo, where he had his sort of an ashram. I went there. They sat in that little glass globe that he had produced, and I could hear my heartbeat like I never heard before. I could hear my breathing like I never heard before. The more still you get, you hear so many sounds. Apart from the breathing and the heart, there are many other gurgling sounds which we don't realize, we don't notice. There is so much sound around us. And then scientists have now come up with a new discovery that everything in this world is moving, mostly in a circular motion. That everything is rotating. Our building blocks of all matter, which are atoms, have electrons spinning around the nucleus. They also found out now that the spin of the electron around the nucleus is causing a humming sound. They have recorded the sound. Even the smallest particle is generating a sound. The other bigger bodies, like in galaxies and so on, they are generating a sound which has sometimes been heard even by the astronauts through the spaceships, and they have recorded them. That means that's a different kind of sound. There is no air there, and yet they heard that sound. There is sound everywhere. If you examine this whole universe, there is a sound, and sometimes it has been referred to as the music of the spheres. The music of the spheres is the same sound. So when we notice that sound exists everywhere, and in meditation, you discover that there is a sound that is generating all your experience. It's very interesting. Where does the sound come from? During the teaching of great master, he said that the main tool we have to go within ourselves is by listening to the sound. We start by listening to the sound on this entire path of the spiritual journey that we are making. First, we hear a master speaking. If we don't hear him speaking, we don't learn anything. This is verbal talk. This is talk which can be spoken and recorded and written, and therefore it has been called Varnatmak Shabd. That means it is a sound, but can be Varnan. That means it can be spoken and it can be written and can be recorded, which is being done. But this is the first sound. If we never heard that sound, we could not know anything about the spiritual path. And then we are required to repeat a mantra, which is also made up of words. Another use of Varanatmik Shabd, Varanatmik sound. So we are using the Varanatmik Shabd. That means a sound that is being used for communicating with us, even the basic teachings. And without that we won't know anything. We are using it for controlling our mind, for controlling thoughts. It's also the spoken sound. So this sound is very interesting, but when we withdraw our attention sufficiently behind the eyes, in the center of the head, behind the eyes in the center, which we sometimes call the third eye center or the single eye. That single eye, when we put our attention there, we find that another sound can be heard. In fact, several sounds can be heard. People have just closed their eyes and sat quietly in a quiet place, even with their ears plugged, with little ear plugs, or with their hands or thumbs or fingers, they still hear the sounds. And those sounds are a variety of kind of sounds. Some sounds are like ringing of bells, some sounds are like the crickets chirping, some sounds are like birds chirping, some sounds are like a train going on a track, some sounds are like a truck going outside. Those are sounds which have nothing to do with the ears or anything outside. Where are they coming from? We asked some medical people, how do these sounds come? They said these sounds come because of the movement of the blood and the lymph in our internal systems. When they move, you can hear it. Maybe that is true. Some of these sounds can be attributed to physical activity of the various fluids in our body, and maybe that's a good explanation for some sounds. But then, if you listen to those sounds, you find there a variety of sounds. Some look like very close to us, some look like they are at a distance. And we have a choice to select which sound we want to hear. When we begin to differentiate between different sounds, we find that a sound that is very similar to the sound of a big bell that we toll on a church, that we use in a temple, that is very similar to the bang that a Maulvi gives in the mosque. When you compare those sounds, which is like a sound that has a little vibe in it, it's got a sine curve in it, up and down, and sometimes it doesn't have it. It's like a continuous whistle blowing or a conch blowing. When a Buddhist monk blows the conch, he is referring to the sound which is very similar to the sound inside. When we hear bells, it's very similar to the sound. That sound seems to be a little different from the other sound that we hear. The difference is that sound seems to pull our attention from the body, which we are trying to do otherwise by the repetition of our simran, by the words. That means the sound has a quality to make us vacate our body of its attention and awareness much faster than can be done with our own effort. So the sound pulls us. It's a very interesting experience to have a sound within yourself that can pull you as if you are being lifted up from the ground and are being pulled into a sky. It's of course an internal sky. You have your ears closed, you have your eyes closed, and you're still being pulled by a sound. Where does that sound come from? It does not come from the right or the left. Many sounds come from right ear, or at least toward the right ear. Many sounds come from the left ear. But this sound does not appear to come from any side and appears to be a sound that is coming from somewhere in the center. If you were to examine where that sound is coming from, by carefully listening to it, you'll find it is coming from exactly the third eye center where you are trying to concentrate your attention. That means the sound is coming from your own self. It's an emanation of your own self. That means your self is expressing itself through a sound. It's nobody else. It's your own self telling you, I am here, and it's being expressed through a sound. When you listen to the sound, you are going within your own self. So that's why it's a very beautiful and simple way to go within yourself by catching to that sound. Of course, the sound comes when you have used sufficient of the other means like similar repetition, other techniques of meditation to pull your attention to the third eye center, and it is more or less halfway through. Then the sound comes. Other sounds come earlier. You can use the other sounds also to put your attention inside, because they are coming from inside. They are not outside. The ears have no role in them. Maybe some of them, the ears may be having a role in it, but since they are happening with your ears closed and you are listening to them, they can still be useful. They have no pull. Those sounds have no pull. But those sounds are heard inside, therefore trying to listen to those sounds which have no pull also withdraws your attention, but slowly at the third eye center within yourself. So that is why I call those sounds practice sounds. They are good for practice. They are good for practicing how to withdraw your attention. But they are not the same sound which pulls you by itself, which is your own self. Your own self pulls you because that's where the attention is being placed. And that is why this sound which is similar to the bell sound or similar to a conch sound, a bell sound, if you listen to it, it may have a frequency of its vibe like dong, dong. As you listen to it, the length of the peal becomes longer. Dong. Ultimately it becomes one, and you can't even know if it's a bell. But it's the same sound, and it is because you are reaching the inmost part of the sound, which does not have that up and down frequency in it. It's the same. So that sound pulls you within, and that sound has no words in it. It cannot really be even written, cannot be spoken, and therefore we differentiate it from the spoken sound of the words we use, which were Varanatmak Shabd. We call that Dhun Atmak Shabd. Dhun Atmak means it is a dhun, it's a sound, but it is not that which we use for communication. But it's good enough for withdrawing our attention within. Listening to the sound can take us to a complete withdrawal of the physical body, and we can become totally unaware just with that sound. It's wonderful that if you listen to the sound, then when the body is being vacated of its awareness, at a certain point, at about 90% withdrawal, the sound seems to turn into light. That means the light and the sound appear to be the same thing. It's a very interesting experience that you can hear the light and see the sound. We don't do that normally here, but there it's a strange experience which startles us that how can we have that experience? In the Bible it is said, if thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be filled with light. It's simply a reference to the ability to concentrate your attention at the single eye, at the third eye center, and it will be filled with the light. There is so much light inside us. It just shines up along with the sound. It's the sound and light are the same. It looks different to us here because it is different. Here, sound travels in air and light travels in space, and therefore it is different here. But it's the same inside. Both travel in the inner space. And that is why the inner space is very important.